What up, YouTube? It's your boy Carter TV, and I got a 5-part series that I'm about to give y'all starting today. This story is called The Therapist. Now, The Therapist, he has on 5 clients that he takes on throughout the week. And each of these clients is different in their own little way. So today we starting with Gary Gay. That's the first client. And the therapist's name is Daniel Davison. Daniel Davison is the therapist's name. And he's taking on all these different types of clients with different backgrounds and different reasons of why they're there. Daniel Davison, basically, the average man, black man. He's a mixed man. He's a mix. So he's black and white. He went to school, PhD, got bachelor's and master's degrees. He has a wife, no kids. See what I'm saying? Wife, no kids. And basically, his life takes a turn when he takes on these clients. His life takes a turn when he takes on these clients. Starting with Gary Gay. So this story today is going to be about Gary Gay. That's his first client for the week. That's the first person he got. Also to note, this is Gary's first time in the field since he has got his degree. And a lot of people, when he got into the field, a lot of people, was, proud of him and everything. And he didn't know what type of people he was going to come across. Now, the people in the agency where he works, they didn't want to take on these clients. None of the people at the agency wanted to take on these clients due to their backgrounds. I'm going to get into details with that as we go out throughout the story. Now, each of these clients' backgrounds is crazy. Gary decides, because he's coming new into this field and he's ready to get a head start, he's going to take on these clients that nobody wants. So, his first day, he gets Gary Gay. Gary Gay's problem is he needs to see somebody because he has thoughts of suicidal. He has thoughts of killing people. And he needs to speak to someone every now and then. Now, the thoughts of him wanting to kill himself, it's like almost a fantasy. Like almost a sexual fantasy. So Gary, he likes to watch like these shows like Criminal Minds. He likes to watch shows like Chicago PD. He likes to watch Law and Order. He likes to watch a lot of these shows where the criminals be killing people and getting away. And he likes to watch cops. All these crazy shows, Fatal Attraction, Forensic Science. Shows like that, and etc. etc. He get infatuated by these shows and everything. What also happens is Gary gets it upon himself to do things that no human should be doing to other humans. So that's just a little bit of his background. So Gary meets Daniel. He meets Daniel Davison. They meet. It's the first time Gary is kind of like intrigued by the man and how he's presenting himself. He kind of sizes him up when they first meet and everything. And Daniel was just looking at him. He's just looking at him like, dude, are we going to get it talking? Like, it's his first day. So he basically tells him a little bit. He tells him a little pinch about himself. And Gary kind of just like, Gary starts to fantasize about killing him already. And he basically, then after that, he snaps Gary out of his fantasy. He makes a sound, so Gary comes true, and it kind of messes up his fantasy, and it kind of disturbs him in a way. So he asks Gary, like, what brings you in to talk with a therapist? And he's kind of anal about answering the question because he kind of wrecked his fantasy and everything. And after that, Gary kind of shuts down a little bit And he was like, is there a reason why you're shutting down right now? Is there a reason why you don't want to talk? So Gary is just like, to be honest with you, I'm here because I really need somebody to talk to about the thoughts that I have. And he lies to him. He said, I have suicidal thoughts. And I need to talk to somebody, to get me throughout maybe a few days or whatever the situation is. I'm here. Then he was like, I'm here so I could talk to you about my thoughts and how can I not have these thoughts and things I can do to prevent myself from having these thoughts. He's also covering up the fact that he also has thoughts of fantasizing of killing people. And he has these thoughts, but he kind of not mentions that. So after that, so Daniel was just like, okay, he basically asked him, like, what caused you to have these thoughts? What goes on in your life? And Gary is just like, well, I have these thoughts because I watch a lot of shows where people are getting killed. So Daniel goes, have you ever thought about not watching the shows? Have you ever thought about watching something like the Discovery Channel? Have you ever thought about watching or doing exercise and stuff like that when you have these thoughts? He said no. It's then he kind of shuts down again because he was about to expose the fact that he fantasizes about this stuff. He gets arousement from these type of stories. So when he watches it at home, he takes care of himself, if you know what I mean. He takes care of himself when he watches these shows. It gets to a point in the show where it arouses him. It gets him going. You know what I mean? So then you ask him, then you switches it up. Then you ask him questions like, are you seeing anybody? Do you have anybody interest? And Gary's like, not really. I mean, I'm on dating apps and everything. And I'm on these dating apps, and sometimes I get scared of meeting people because I don't want them to think I'm weird. So then he was just like, it's not okay. It's okay to, be scared. It's okay to be nervous. That's just you coming out your comfort zone. So when Gary heard that, he kind of came to. He kind of let loose a little bit, and he was like, I had tried to meet people, but I also got scared when I seen them. Either I'm intimidated or I don't know what to say. So their session lasts about 2 hours. After the first 2 hours, the session is pretty much over. And towards the end of the session, Gary starts to come more comfortable with Daniel. So he lets go. So when the 2 hours is up and the session is over, Gary is just starting to get comfortable with Daniel. And Daniel basically lets him know, our time is up, Gary. Can I get you in for another session next Monday? So Gary is like, definitely. So throughout the rest of the week, Gary is trying to find ways to not have these thoughts. He's having thoughts of killing people. He's having thoughts of hurting them, harming them in the worst possible way. And to end the thoughts, he would end the thought with him killing himself in the most calmest way you could possibly think of, most weirdest way you could think of. You know what I mean? So the next session takes place on another following Monday. Gary comes in. He comes in with paint on his hands, red paint. He was just having another set of thoughts that I told you he had thoughts of killing people. He was having those thoughts of killing somebody, and he had the idea of he took red paint and looked at his hands as if they already had blood on it. So he was getting that momentum of getting that feel. It was like, he was rubbing it, feeling it, doing all types of weird shit. Like, just getting into it. Like, it was like a slow dance for him. Like, he was finding a rhythm to it. With it, right? And he's sitting in the office. Daniel comes in and he sees him with this red stuff on his hand. And Daniel don't know what it is. So he asks him, he's like, you okay there, Gary? Is that blood? So Gary, he's kind of like, he wants to say no, but he also wants to say yes, just to see how he reacts. So he goes, not necessarily. Daniel, not necessarily. So he's like, what's with the red stuff again? Like, what is it? So Gary goes, it's paint. It's paint. I look at it as if it's blood, if I do so say. I look at it as if it's blood. When I first met you, I kind of told you I just have suicidal thoughts. I have other thoughts too, Daniel. And these thoughts makes me feel good. It makes me feel calm. It makes me feel at ease. It makes me feel normal, is the word he used. And Daniel was like, what other thoughts do you have that involves red paint? So Daniel kind of put it two to two together once he asked him. So Gary gets up, he walks around the room, rubbing his hands together, feeling the texture of the paint. As he's feeling the texture of the paint, he's fantasizing about a victim, woman per se. So woman in his building that he does not like, and he's fantasizing about harming her, cutting her guts out, digging his hands into her stomach, pulling on her insides, digging inside up her rib cage and filling on her heart and then pulling it out of place. He's doing all of this as he's walking around the room while Daniel was talking to him. And he comes to when Daniel says, Gary, you want to drink of water? You want to get that off your hands? And he snaps him out. It snaps him out as he fantasizes. He snaps him out. He goes, what? You interrupt my daydreaming for a cup of water? Are you fucking kidding me? And then Daniel, relax there, buddy. He said, don't tell me to fucking relax. You just ruined something for me. I was feeling good. I was in a good place. I just wanted you to let me finish daydreaming about what I was daydreaming, then we could have spoke about it. So he's like, well, being that you're this angry, speak on it now. So when Daniel did that, he brought his hands together like this. Speak on it now. And it kind of intimidated Gary, making him feel more or less of a man, like, this guy sizing me up now. I don't like this. So Gary said, as Gary starts to get more angry, Daniel stays calm. And that bothered Gary because he likes people to be intimidated of him. He has this vision of himself, of him being the monster. You know what I mean? He has this vision of him being the person in control, and it's not working for him. So Daniel is much of a bigger guy than Gary is. He's about 200 pounds and he's muscle. You know what I mean? He takes care of his body. So after that, the session ends early when that happens. The session ends super early due to how Gary was feeling. He comes over, he sits down, he says, Daniel, I'm going to end this session very early. I don't like what's going on. I feel like you're trying to intimidate me. I feel like you're trying to punk me in a sort. And I feel very uncomfortable. So I'm going to take my leave and end this session a little early today. And he flicks him off and he says, fuck you. And he leaves. So Daniel he's taken back by this. He's like, what the hell just happened? So Daniel speaks to his wife. In the midst of him speaking to his wife, Gary digs up information on Daniel. He digs up a lot of information, who he's married to, where he's lived. All his personal information is on the internet. And he finds his wife. Now, when he was doing all this searching, he was in a public place. I want to say a Starbucks. He was on his laptop. He was digging them up. Found them. And while he's in this Starbucks looking them up, having a latte, like shit sweet, he come across his wife. And he spots her. He follows her. She becomes one of his victims in his fantasy. And he gets more aroused. It's to the point where his print is showing in public. And it doesn't faze him that it's showing. because he's feeling so much from it, right? It's to the point where he goes home, he finishes himself, he gets right, he finishes himself. Right after he finishes himself, he goes into the fantasy again and gets more aroused. It's to the point where he wants to harm Daniel's wife now. He wants to, you know what I mean, do what he do. So the next session comes around, Gary doesn't show. He misses out on that appointment. He misses out on the next 2 appointments, so he done missed 3 appointments. And it's mandatory for him to go because he gets into these thoughts. After he gets into these thoughts of being missing for like the next 3 sessions, Daniel runs into him at a Target. And he's like, "Hey, Gary." And Gary's taken back to run into him in that public place because Gary knows he doesn't live in the area. But him and his wife just so happen to be there. And once he sees his wife, the fantasy kicks in. But and due to the fantasy kicking in, she walks away. She goes, "Honey, I'm gonna go over here. I see something. Talk to you need to talk to." She walks away. And when she walks away, it messes up his fantasy. So he snaps to, and Gary goes, "What are you doing around here, these parts? You don't live over here." So Daniel goes, "How would you know I don't live over here?" Gary basically tell him, "I did my homework on you, buddy. I looked you up. I know where you went to school. I know where you grew up at." And Daniel goes, "Okay, why did you do that?" He said, "To be honest with you, you intimidated me in our last session. I felt some type of way. I explained this to you while I left early. And I just needed something to feel like I can overpower you. And I found what your weakness is, and it's your wife." So he was like, "Don't fuck with me. When I speak, you listen. When I fantasize, you wait until I'm done talking." With that being said, Daniel's not intimidated by him. And Daniel goes, "Well, if you feel that way, I'll just pass you on to someone else. If you feel so much intimidated by me, you can't handle a simple 2-hour talk session." Now they get into a verbal conversation. Not a verbal go back and forth. It's a verbal conversation where Daniel handles this and he shuts him down. If you feel that much way, how about you find, or I suggest you get another therapist who you can feel that way with, if I'm too much of a man for you. So Gary's like, "Too much of a man? Okay, Daniel, if that's how you want to play, let's play. I'll be at the next session." He said, "You know this will be your final session, right? So let's go out with a bang, shall we?" So Gary walks away. His wife comes back, and the wife goes, "Who's that, honey?" "One of my patients." "Let's go home." He rubs it off. He gets home. His crib is vandalized. It's destroyed and whatnot. And it's a message in his kitchen on his cabinets that says, "See you at the next session." So the wife is taken back, like, who could have done this? Blah, blah, blah. So then he was like, "Just call the police. Let's get this media." He's calm with this. He's calm because he don't want to show his wife that he's freaking out. So when he's like not with his wife, she goes to bed early. He's freaking out. He's upset. He goes in his basement. He's hitting a punching bag. He's taking his frustration out. He's blown back by this. You know what I mean? That this really happened. With that going on, it's a final session. It's a final Monday for him to have this session. And being that he missed 3 of the sessions that he was supposed to have taken, Gary has been doing a lot of things while he missed these sessions. He's actually been killing people. He killed the lady in his apartment building where he lived. He killed the man next door who's always throwing parties. He killed the lady at Starbucks who rejected him numerous times. He takes all this rage out on all these people. When Daniel sizes them up and intimidates him, he takes his frustration out on all these people. He kills the lady in his apartment building who's nagging him all the time. Kills her in her apartment. He kills the dude who lives next door to him and his guests in their apartment. And then the lady at Starbucks, he kills her and leaves her body in an alleyway. Now, they never find out who killed these people. They never find out. Never found out. So Gary, he comes to the final session. No. Before he comes to the final session, the wife is kidnapped. Daniel is on his way to the session. The wife is going out for a daily job. Gary spots her. He learns her routine, spots her. Boop. He's seen that Daniel went to the session and is on his way to the session. Let me take this time and snatch her the fuck up. Snatches her up, beats her up a little bit, puts her in an abandoned building. Goes to the session about half an hour late. He gets to the session. His clothes is somewhat wrinkly and a little dirty. He has a scratch on his neck, what looked like somebody he's been fighting with. So he comes in and he sits down, folds his legs. He's in the session. And comes in, hello Daniel. You know what I mean? Daniel's like, you're 30 minutes late, buddy. It's not looking good for the end of the session. And so Daniel starts by saying, you know, last time we had an encounter, it felt wrong to me. I just want to apologize if I came off to you in any way. He apologized to me. Gary's already gone. He would say, it's okay. Let's just finish this session with a bang. You know? You did what you did. I did what I did. It's okay. We're good. We're great. After this session, you won't ever see me again, buddy. I thank you. And this little speech that Gary gives, it alarms Daniel a little bit. It alarms him. And the police calls Daniel while the session goes on. When they couldn't get a hold of him, they showed up to the place. They showed up, knocked on the door, and they, excused their interruption, but these police officers need to see you, and whatever. And so he was like, excuse me for a minute, Daniel. Excuse me for a minute, Gary. My bad, keep getting them too mixed up. Excuse me for a minute, Gary. Try to see what this is about. Take your time. So Daniel goes to the officers. They tell him, like, your wife just been kidnapped. People have saying someone have seen some guy snatch her up, take her, da-da-da-da. We're going to do whatever we can to find your wife, and everything. So basically what happens now, then you go back into the session. He tells Gary, I got to end this session. I'm sorry, this got to end this way. It's been nice knowing you, but I got a family emergency. Gary, I got to go. He said, I'm sure you do. Goodbye, Daniel. And he leaves. So the police is like, you may know who abducted your wife. Gary overhears this, and he's smiling on his way out. He's like, who was, police officer like, who was that? That was one of my patients, and it was his last day, and I didn't want to end the session the way it's ending, but it is what it is. So Gary heads home, packs his stuff up. He's getting ready to skip town and leave the wife to die where she is. So what happens though is the wife had her phone. Even though Gary thought he broke it, it still works. He kind of just tossed it aside, and the wife was managing enough to come up from where she was knocked out and beaten up at. She's chained up in an abandoned building, and she's able to use her feet to pull her phone in. Now the phone is half broken, but she could see half of the screen. So she manages to call her husband, and while she calls her husband, Gary's made it home. He's packing his stuff, and the officer's about to leave when Daniel gets a phone call from his wife. He said, officers, wait, my wife is calling me. So he picks up. He's like, he hears how frantic she is, scared. She's breathing heavy. And he go, honey, where are you? Where are you? She's like, I'm in some abandoned building. A guy attacked me while I was out for a run. A little scrawny white guy. He had a scratch on his neck. I scratched him on his neck. So when Daniel heard that, he already knew who it was. He dropped the phone and ran. He ran straight to Gary's place. Gary's already gone. He's already on the road. He's already on his way to Skip Town. Before he's on his drive, he calls Daniel one last time. But Daniel doesn't pick up because he doesn't have his phone. The officers pick it up. He goes, hey Daniel, did you find your wife? So the officer's like, who is this? Oh, this is not Daniel? I'm pretty sure his wife is dead by now. Tell him have a good day. They trace the call. They find it that it's Gary. And Gary's on his way, I guess, to Skip Town. Before he does that, he stops at the warehouse where the wife is. And she ends up escaping out her cuffs. And when she escapes, she runs into her husband because he made it to the building. He found out where she was. She turned on her location and he found out where she was. So he gets there. He gets there just enough time to see that she escaped. Grabs her. Gary shows up. See that she gets out. He's furious. He's mad because he wanted her to die slowly. So he takes his car and he tries to run them off the road. What ends up happening is Daniel pushes his wife out the way. He gets hit by the car. Daniel also crashes into the building, killing himself. Daniel wakes up 2 days later in the hospital with just some broken arm. Come to. And that's how the story ends on that note. I'm going to hit y'all with part 2 later on today with another patient Daniel takes on. It's your boy Carter TV. I'm out, y'all.